The orbital station hung in space like a massive steel flower, its petals spreading wide to catch the light of 3 distant suns. Captain Daeho Kim stood in the observation deck, watching ships from a dozen different worlds dock at various ports. Each vessel was different, some sleek and silver, others blocky and practical. He had been in space for 3 weeks now, but the sights still amazed him. "Captain Kim, they are ready for you." The voice came from behind him. Daeho turned to see. Ambassador Hyunwoo Lee, a tall being with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. The ambassador wore robes that seemed to shift colors in the light. "Thank you, Ambassador," Daeho said. He straightened his uniform and followed the alien down a long corridor. Beside him walked Sergeant Minji Park, her combat boots making sharp sounds on the metal floor. She carried herself like a coiled spring, always ready. The armory was enormous. Weapons lined the walls from floor to ceiling, each one displayed behind clear panels that hummed with energy. Daeho had seen impressive arsenals before, but nothing like this. These weapons looked like they belonged in a museum of future technology. Commander Seojin Choi waited for them in the center of the room. The commander's species had 3 eyes and skin that looked like polished stone. Seojin smiled, showing no teeth. "Welcome, humans. We are honored to show you the weapons that have protected the Coalition for 5,000 years. Daeho and Minji bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. "The honor is ours," Daeho replied. Hyunwoo walked to the first weapon display. With a wave of one hand, the panel opened. He lifted out a rifle that glowed with internal light. "This is the Plasma Cascade Rifle. It fires superheated energy bolts at targets up to 8 kilometers away. The targeting computer can track 50 separate enemies and calculate wind, gravity, and atmospheric conditions in milliseconds." Daeho took the weapon when offered. It was lighter than he expected, perfectly balanced. He looked through the sight and saw a display that showed distance, temperature, and wind speed. A small computer voice whispered in his ear, identifying potential targets in the room. He lowered the weapon carefully. "Impressive." Minji took her turn examining it. She nodded but said nothing. Seojin moved to the next display, the Graviton Pulse Cannon. It creates a focused gravity wave that can crush vehicles or disable shields. Range of 12 kilometers. The weapon was larger, requiring both hands to hold. Daeho tested its weight and balance. For the next hour, they moved through the armory. Molecular disruptors that tore apart the bonds between atoms. Phase shift shields that could make a soldier nearly invisible. Energy projectors that could cut through solid steel like paper. Each weapon was a marvel, built with technology that Earth was still decades away from matching. Daeho examined each one carefully. He asked about power cells, maintenance requirements, failure rates. He tested weights and grips. He was professional and thorough. But something bothered him, a question that grew larger with each new weapon. Finally, they reached the end of the tour. Seojin spread all 4 arms wide. "This is our arsenal. With these weapons, we offer humanity a place in the Coalition Defense Forces. Together, we will push back the Void Swarm and protect our worlds." Daeho set down the last weapon he had been examining. He looked at Minji, who raised one eyebrow slightly. He turned back to the aliens. "These are excellent weapons. The technology is beyond anything we have on Earth. But I have a question." "Please ask anything," Hyunwoo said. "Where are the bayonet mounts?" Silence filled the armory. The aliens looked at each other, confusion clear on their faces. Seojin tilted his head. "Bayonet? I do not know this word." "A blade," Daeho explained. He gestured to the rifle in front of him. "A knife or blade that attaches to the weapon. For close combat." Hyunwoo's face wrinkled in what might have been puzzlement. "Why would you need close combat?" "These weapons can engage enemies from kilometers away. You never need to be near the enemy." Minji spoke for the first time. "What happens when the enemy gets close anyway?" "We retreat," Seojin said simply. "We fall back to optimal firing range and engage again. Close combat is inefficient and dangerous." Daeho walked along the weapons display, running his hand near the panels. "Do you have any backup weapons? Knives, clubs, anything for when these stop working?" "Why would they stop working?" Hyunwoo asked. Each weapon has redundant power systems and can operate for 72 hours of continuous fire. What about electromagnetic pulses? Jamming? Physical damage to the power cells? Deho turned to face them. What happens when your shields fail and the enemy is right in front of you? Seojin's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. That rarely happens. But it does happen, Minji said. It was not a question. The commander's stone-like skin seemed to darken slightly. Sometimes, when it does, casualties are high. We call for orbital support and evacuate the area. Deho and Minji exchanged a long look. May we see footage from your recent battles against the Void Swarm? Deho asked. Of course, Hyunwoo said, but he sounded uncertain now. But why? Because I think we need to understand how you fight, Deho said, and how the enemy fights. They moved to a conference room attached to the armory. Seojin activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air, showing battles from a dozen different worlds. The coalition forces fought with discipline and precision. Their weapons cut down enemies at incredible distances. Energy shields flickered and held against incoming fire. Deho watched carefully, noting patterns. Minji leaned forward, her eyes tracking every movement, then the pattern emerged. In battle after battle, the same sequence played out. The Void Swarm would charge forward in waves. Coalition forces would devastate them at long range. Then, suddenly, a pulse of electromagnetic energy would wash across the battlefield. Shields would fail, weapons would flicker and die. And the swarm would be close, too close. What happened next was carnage. The aliens scrambled to restart their weapons or activate backup systems. But the swarm warriors were already among them, all claws and mandibles and savage fury. Coalition soldiers tried to use their rifles as clubs, but the delicate instruments shattered. They ran, and the swarm cut them down from behind. How often does this happen? Deho asked quietly. Seojin did not meet his eyes. 78% of ground engagements end with electromagnetic disruption. And your casualties in close combat? 94%. The room fell silent except for the hum of the holographic display. Deho stood up and walked back to the armory. He picked up the plasma rifle again, this beautiful piece of advanced technology. He held it by the barrel and tried to swing it like a club. The balance was wrong, the weapon too fragile. He set it down and drew his combat knife from his belt. The blade was simple steel, 20 centimeters long. It had no computer, no power cell, no advanced technology. But it was solid and real and would work even if every electronic system in the galaxy failed. This is a knife, he said, holding it up. Humans have been using them for 50,000 years. We still use them because sometimes, no matter how good your technology is, war comes down to two people close enough to touch. And when that happens, you need something that will not fail. Hyunwoo stared at the simple blade. You still fight like primitives, Minji smiled, and there was no humor in it. We fight like survivors. There's a difference. Deho sheathed his knife. I have a proposal. Let us run a training exercise. Your soldiers against ours. We will use your weapons, follow your tactics. But we will see what happens when the technology fails. Seojin looked uncertain. What is the point of this exercise? To show you why we still carry bayonets, Deho said. And why you should too. The training ground was a maze of corridors and rooms built to simulate urban combat. Metal walls rose 3 stories high, creating narrow streets and wide plazas. Holographic projectors could turn the space into any battlefield in the galaxy. Today, it looked like a bombed-out city on some forgotten world. Lieutenant Jawan Han walked the perimeter, checking systems. The lieutenant's species had silver fur and large ears that swiveled to catch every sound. Jiwan had been a tactical analyst for 12 years and had reviewed thousands of combat scenarios. This exercise made no sense to him. Why are we doing this? Jiwan asked Commander Seojin, who stood nearby reviewing troop positions. The humans requested it, Seojin replied. They want to demonstrate something. What could they possibly demonstrate? Our weapons are superior? Our tactics are proven? This is a waste of time. Seojin's 3 eyes focused on the lieutenant. You watch the battle footage with me. You saw the casualty numbers. Perhaps we should listen. Giwan's ears flattened against his head, but he said nothing more. Captain Daeho Kim stood on the opposite side of the training ground with his team. There were 12 humans total, including Sergeant Minji Park and Private Taejun Shin. Taejun was young, barely 22, but he had trained in close combat since he was 15. He carried the standard Coalition plasma rifle they had been issued, but his body language showed he was not comfortable with it. Remember, Daeho said to his team, we use their weapons and their tactics for the first phase. When the EMP hits, then we adapt. Minji checked her rifle one last time. How long do you think they will last? Against us? 3 minutes, maybe 4. Daeho smiled grimly. But that is not the point. The point is to show them what happens when the technology fails. Private Taejun adjusted his gear. Under his Coalition-issued vest, hidden from view, he carried a combat knife and a small tomahawk. Each member of the human team had similar backup weapons, concealed but ready. The exercise began with a simulated alarm. Both teams moved into the urban environment from opposite sides. The Coalition team moved with practiced efficiency, taking cover behind walls and setting up overlapping fields of fire. They were good, Daeho had to admit. Disciplined and professional, the humans mimicked Coalition tactics, moving carefully and using their weapons' long-range capabilities. The first contact came at a distance of 200 meters. Both sides exchanged simulated fire, the training weapons emitting harmless light beams that registered hits on sensors. For 10 minutes, the battle played out exactly as Coalition doctrine dictated. Long-range engagements, tactical retreats to better positions, coordinated fire. The Coalition team was winning slightly, their superior knowledge of the weapons giving them an edge. Then Daeho pressed a button on his wrist device. The electromagnetic pulse was simulated, but its effects were real within the training ground. Every energy weapon shut down. Every shield flickered and died. Tactical displays went dark. For 5 seconds, there was only silence. The Coalition soldiers froze. Jiwon spoke into his dead communicator, trying to reach his team. Other soldiers shook their weapons, pressing buttons that no longer worked. They looked at each other with confusion on their faces. The humans moved. Minji drew her knife in one smooth motion and sprinted toward the nearest Coalition soldier. Taejun unswung a shotgun from his back, a simple mechanical weapon that needed no power cells. Other humans produced tomahawks, combat knives, and entrenching tools with sharpened edges. The Coalition team tried to respond. They swung their rifles like clubs, but the weapons were too light and fragile. One rifle shattered against a wall. Another bent when used to block a knife strike. They had no training for this, no doctrine, no preparation. Daeho closed with a soldier who had at least 6 inches of height on him. The alien tried to tackle him, but Daeho sidestepped and swept the alien's legs. As the soldier fell, Daeho placed his training knife against the alien's throat. You are eliminated, he said calmly. Then moved to the next target. Minji fought like she had been born with a blade in her hand. She moved between 3 Coalition soldiers, her knife never stopping. Each touch was a simulated kill registered by the training sensors. The soldiers tried to grab her to use their physical strength, but she was too fast and too skilled. Taejun stood at a corner, his shotgun booming. The weapon fired rubber bullets that stung but did not seriously injure. Each shot dropped a Coalition soldier who had tried to rush his position. When his shotgun ran empty, he drew his tomahawk and met the next soldier in hand-to-hand combat. In 2 minutes and 40 seconds, every Coalition soldier was eliminated. They sat or lay on the ground, training sensors blinking red. Some nursed bruises. All looked shocked. Seojin walked onto the training ground, his face unreadable. Daeho ordered his team to stand down. They holstered their weapons and helped the Coalition soldiers to their feet. What just happened? Giwan asked, his silver fur standing on end. How did you do that? Minji cleaned her knife with a cloth before sheathing it. You relied completely on your energy weapons. When they stopped working, you had nothing else. Our weapons are not supposed to stop working, Jawan protested. But they do, Daeho said. We watched your battle footage. In almost 80% of your fights, the Void Swarm disables your technology. Then they close with you and tear you apart because you have forgotten how to fight without machines. A coalition soldier, one of the larger ones, stepped forward. His name was Baikun, and he had 3 parallel bruises across his chest where Taijun's tomahawk had struck. These weapons you used are primitive, inefficient. Why carry them when you have plasma rifles? Private Taijun spoke up, his voice respectful but firm. Because a knife always works. It does not need a power cell. It does not fail when someone uses an electromagnetic pulse. When everything else stops working, steel still cuts. Seojin picked up one of the human combat knives that had been set aside. He examined it carefully, turning it over in his hands. We have not fought with blades in 5,000 years. It seems barbaric to us. War is barbaric, Minji said. Pretending otherwise does not make it less true. It just makes you unprepared when reality breaks through your illusions. The group stood in silence for a moment. Around them, the training ground hummed as it reset for the next exercise. Holographic walls faded and reappeared. Lights blinked back to life. Daeho walked to where Seojin stood. Commander, we are not saying your weapons are bad. They are incredible, far better than anything we have on Earth, but they are not enough by themselves. You need backup plans. You need weapons that work when the power fails. You need soldiers who can fight with their hands if necessary. Seojin looked at the knife in his hands, then at the humans standing before him. You are saying we have become soft? No, Daeho said firmly. You have become specialized. There is a difference. You are excellent at what you do. But war does not care about excellence in one area. It tests everything. The side that can adapt, that has multiple ways to fight, that is the side that survives? V1's ears lifted slightly. You want to teach us to fight like you? We want to help you remember how to fight when the technology fails, Minji corrected. You once knew this. Your ancestors fought with claws and teeth and whatever they could find. Somewhere along the way, you forgot that sometimes the enemy will not let you fight at a distance. Baikun touched the bruises on his chest. It hurt when you hit me, he said to Taijun. I have trained in combat for years, but I have never been hurt like that. Pain teaches, Taijun said. We train hard so that when real combat comes, our bodies remember what to do. We make mistakes in training so we do not make them when our lives depend on it. Another coalition soldier spoke up. How long would it take to learn what you know? Daeho considered the question. To become expert fighters. Years, but to become competent enough to survive close combat? We can teach you basics in a few weeks. Enough to give you a chance when your shields fail and the enemy is close. Seojin handed the knife back too. Daeho, the commander's 3 eyes focused on him with an intensity that suggested a decision had been made. Show us, teach us these primitive ways. If they can save even a fraction of the lives we have lost, then they are worth learning. There is nothing primitive about wanting to survive, Daeho said. Every species in the galaxy started with simple weapons. You just need to remember that the simple ones still work when the complex ones fail. Jiwon stepped forward. I want to learn. Show me how to fight when my rifle stops working. One by one, the other coalition soldiers echoed the request. They had felt helpless during the exercise, and none of them wanted to feel that way in real combat. Minji smiled, and this time there was warmth in it. Then let us begin. First lesson. When someone is trying to kill you, the most advanced weapon in the galaxy is the one in your hand that still works. The training began that afternoon and would continue for weeks. The coalition soldiers learned to fight with knives and clubs. They learned to use their rifles as spears when the power died. They learned that courage and skill mattered as much as technology, and they learned that humanity, for all its lack of advanced weapons, understood something fundamental about war that the coalition had forgotten. Every battle eventually comes down to the will of one fighter against another. Engineer Jungmin Kwan stood in the weapon design laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays showing plasma rifle schematics. She had been working for 16 hours straight, surviving on coffee and determination. Her eyes were red, but her hands were steady as she manipulated the three-dimensional models. "It should not be this difficult," she muttered to herself. Just at a mounting point. The door opened and Captain Daeho Kim entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Jungmin. "Still working?" "The coalition rifles are too delicate," Jungmin explained, highlighting a section of the schematic. "The plasma chamber here cannot handle the stress of close combat. If you attach a bayonet and strike something hard, the whole weapon might fail." Daeho sipped his coffee and studied the display. "So we need to reinforce the structure?" "Yes, but without adding too much weight. And without interfering with the plasma flow. And without changing how it handles." Jungmin zoomed in on the barrel assembly. "I have been trying different alloys and structural supports. I think I have a solution, but it will require testing." At that moment, researcher Sora Yoon entered the laboratory. Sora's species had crystalline growths on their skin that pulsed with soft light. She had been working with the Coalition Weapon Development Program for 30 years. "You are still here?" she asked Jungmin. "I am close to a solution," Jungmin replied. Sora examined the schematics with a critical eye. "You are adding unnecessary weight to a perfectly balanced weapon. A bayonet mount is primitive thinking. We should be developing better shields or longer-range weapons." "Better shields can still fail," Daeho said calmly. "We have seen the footage. The Void Swarm's electromagnetic pulses defeat your best shields 78% of the time." "Then we need better pulses protection, not knives," Sora argued. Her crystalline growths flashed red briefly, a sign of frustration in her species. Jungmin turned from the holographic display. "Researcher Sora, I respect your experience. But I watched Coalition soldiers die because they had no backup plan. If my retrofit can save even one life, it is worth the extra 50 grams of weight." The 3 of them stood in silence for a moment. Finally, Sora sighed, and her crystals returned to their normal soft blue color. "Show me what you have designed. If it does not compromise the weapon's primary function, I will support the testing." For the next hour, Jungmin walked them through her design. She had created a mounting system that used the rifle's own structural supports. The bayonet could be attached or removed quickly. When attached, it did not interfere with the weapon's plasma firing mechanism. When the rifle was used as a club, reinforced sections protected the critical components, but Jungmin had gone further. She had designed a hard light blade that activated when the rifle's power reserves dropped below 10%. "When the weapon is almost dead, it can still cut," she explained. "Not as well as steel, but better than nothing." Sora examined the design from every angle. She ran simulation after simulation, testing stress points and failure modes. Finally, she nodded. "It is clever. I still think we should focus on preventing close combat entirely, but this design does not compromise the weapon's primary function. We can test it." The testing took 3 days. They built prototype bayonets and mounted them on standard plasma rifles. Coalition soldiers and human instructors both tested the weapons, running them through every possible scenario. The results were better than expected. The rifles still performed at full capacity for long-range combat, but now they had a backup option for close encounters. Commander Seojin authorized full production after seeing the test results. Within 2 weeks, every rifle in the Coalition arsenal was being retrofitted with bayonet mounts, but the physical weapons were only part of the change. The harder part was teaching Coalition soldiers to use them. Sergeant Minji Park stood in the training hall, facing 200 Coalition soldiers from a dozen different species. Some were tall and thin, others short and heavily built. Some had 2 arms, others had 4 or 6, but all of them looked uncomfortable holding combat knives. "I know this feels wrong to you," Minji said, her voice carrying across the hall. "You are soldiers who fight with precision weapons at long range. Being asked to stab someone with a knife feels barbaric." "Beneath you." The soldiers shifted uneasily. Several nodded. "But let me tell you something about barbarism," Minji continued. She drew her own combat knife, the blade catching the light. "This knife is honest. It does not pretend war is clean or civilized. It does not let you kill from a distance and forget that you have taken a life. When you fight with a blade, you understand exactly what war is. She began to walk among the soldiers. The Void Swarm does not care about your feelings. They do not care if close combat is beneath you. When they disable your shields and your weapons fail, they will come for you with claws and mandibles. And in that moment, you will wish you had practiced with this knife instead of worrying about dignity. Private Taejin Shin stepped forward to assist with the demonstration. We will teach you 3 basic attacks and 3 basic defenses, he said. These are not fancy. They are not pretty. But they work. The training was brutal. Coalition soldiers who had never been hit in combat training suddenly found themselves with bruises and sore muscles. Their pride was hurt worse than their bodies. Many complained. Lieutenant Jiwon Han was one of the loudest complainers at first. This is ridiculous, he said after being disarmed for the 5th time. I am a tactical analyst, not a barbarian. Minji faced him directly. You are a soldier. The Void Swarm will not care about your job title when they are ripping you apart. Now pick up your knife and try again. Jiwon's silver fur bristled, but he picked up the training knife. This time, when Minji attacked, he managed to block. It was clumsy and slow, but it was progress. The breakthrough came in the 3rd week of training. Commander Seo Jin had been working with the human instructors every evening, learning the basic techniques. The commander was older, and his stone-like body did not move as quickly as the younger soldiers. But Seo Jin was determined. On the 21st day, Seo Jin successfully completed the basic knife fighting course. He faced off against Private Taejin in a demonstration fight and managed to score 2 hits before being eliminated. When the fight ended, Seo Jin stood before all the assembled soldiers. I am not young, the commander said. My body does not move like yours. I have commanded from a distance for 20 years. But I learned to fight with a blade because war does not care about my preferences. It does not care that I find close combat distasteful. The only thing that matters is surviving to protect our people. The commander held up his training knife. This is not beneath us. Nothing that keeps us alive is beneath us. The humans have not given us primitive weapons. They have given us options. They have given us the ability to keep fighting when everything else fails. After that, complaints decreased. The soldiers trained harder, pushed themselves further. They began to understand that carrying a knife did not make them primitive. It made them prepared. Engineer Jung Min Kwan continued to improve the weapon designs. She created reinforced rifle stocks that could serve as effective clubs. She designed compact breaching axes that could be carried on standard combat webbing. She even created a shock maul that worked on both electrical power and as a simple, mechanical weapon when power failed. Researcher Sora Yoon slowly changed her opinion. She began suggesting improvements to the backup weapon systems. Her crystalline growths glowed bright blue when she successfully designed a blade coating that stayed sharp even after repeated use. I was wrong, Sora admitted to Daeho one evening. They stood in the laboratory, watching a new batch of hybrid weapons being assembled. I thought backup weapons were a step backward. But they are insurance. We should have had them all along. It is hard to see what you are missing until someone points it out, Daeho said. Your weapons are still far superior to ours. You just needed to remember that the best weapon is useless if you cannot adapt when circumstances change. 6 weeks after the first training exercise, the coalition military held a graduation ceremony. 2,000 soldiers had completed the basic close-quarters combat course. They stood in formation, each one carrying a rifle with a bayonet mount and backup weapons on their belts. General Unisong presided over the ceremony. The general species was massive, standing nearly 3 meters tall with 4 powerful arms. Yuna had been a soldier for 40 years and had seen countless battles. Today we add something new to our doctrine, the general announced. Not because it is fashionable, but because it is necessary. We have learned from our human allies that flexibility is a weapon in itself. Yuna held up a rifle with its bayonet fixed. This is not a symbol of going backward. It is a symbol of being complete. We can fight at any range with any weapon. We are not dependent on one system or one approach. We are soldiers who can adapt. The ceremony ended with a demonstration. Coalition soldiers and human instructors worked together, showing the hybrid fighting style. Long-range precision followed by smooth transition to close combat. It was impressive and a little terrifying. After the ceremony, Commander Seojin found Daeho watching the soldiers disperse. "Your people have changed how we think about war," Seojin said. The alarms woke everyone in the garrison. Captain Yoonji Kang rolled out of her bunk already reaching for her gear. She had learned in 10 years of combat that the seconds between sleeping and fighting could mean life or death. Around her, other human soldiers were doing the same, moving with practiced efficiency. "Swarm incoming," someone called out. Multiple dropships breaking atmosphere. Yoonji was dressed and armed in 90 seconds. She grabbed her rifle, checked the bayonet mount, and confirmed her backup weapons were secure. Combat knife on her left hip, tactical tomahawk on her right, and a compact shotgun slung across her back. She ran for the command center. Threshold Prime was a mining colony with 2 million inhabitants. The garrison defending it consisted of 5,000 coalition soldiers and 300 human advisors. The humans were supposed to be training the locals, but training time was over. Commander Seojin was already in the command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the approaching Void Swarm fleet. Scout Minho An stood nearby, his large ears swiveling as he processed multiple audio feeds. Minho's species had incredible hearing, making him an excellent early warning system. "How many?" Yoonji asked, moving to stand beside Seojin. "At least 50,000 swarm warriors," Seojin replied. His 3 eyes moved rapidly between displays. "Maybe more. They are hitting us hard and fast. Reinforcements?" Captain Daeho Kim entered the command center, Sergeant Minji Park right behind him. 3 days away minimum," Seojin said. "We are on our own until then." Daeho studied the tactical display. The swarm was landing in 4 locations around the colony perimeter. It was a classic encirclement strategy, designed to cut off retreat and force the defenders to fight on multiple fronts. They are going to try the same tactics they always use. Hit us with electromagnetic pulses, disable our shields, then close to melee range. "But this time we are ready," Seojin said. There was determination in his voice, but also fear. This would be the first real test of the new training, Lieutenant. Kiwan Han coordinated defensive positions from a secondary console. The lieutenant had completed the combat training and now carried a combat knife alongside his plasma rifle. "All units are moving to assigned sectors. The soldiers know what to do if shields fail. Do they?" Minji asked quietly. "Knowing what to do in training is different from doing it when the enemy is real and trying to kill you." "We are about to find out," Yoonji said. The first wave hit the northern perimeter 30 minutes later. Swarm dropships crashed into the ground, their doors exploding open before they even stopped moving. Warriors poured out, each one a nightmare of chitin and claws. They were 3 meters tall, moving on 6 legs with 2 arms ending in razor-sharp talons. Coalition forces opened fire at maximum range. Plasma bolts cut through the air, each one finding a target. Swarm warriors fell by the dozens, their bodies torn apart by superheated energy. For 5 minutes it was a perfect demonstration of coalition firepower. The enemy died in droves and could not get close. Then the electromagnetic pulse hit. It was not visible, but its effects were immediate. Shields flickered and died across the entire northern perimeter. Energy weapons shut down. Tactical displays went dark. For 3 seconds, there was only silence. Then the swarm charged. Private Taejin Shin was in the northern sector when the pulse hit. He felt his shield fail and saw his plasma rifle's display go dark. Around him, coalition soldiers hesitated, their training battling their instincts. Years of doctrine told them to retreat when shields failed. Weeks of training told them to stand and fight. "Fix bayonets?" Taejun shouted. He slammed his own bayonet onto his rifle's mount, the blade locking into place with a solid click. The coalition soldiers heard him. They had trained for this moment. Hands that wanted to shake steadied themselves. Bayonets were fixed to rifles. Backup weapons were drawn. The soldiers formed a line and waited. The swarm warriors hit the defensive line like a wave hitting a wall. But this time, the wall did not break. Taejun met the first warrior with his bayonet, driving it into the creature's thorax. The warrior shrieked and tried to claw him, but he twisted the blade and pulled it free, moving to the next target. Beside him, a coalition soldier used her rifle like a spear. Stabbing and pulling back, stabbing again, the fighting was brutal and close. Swarm warriors died on human blades. Coalition soldiers discovered that their new training worked, that they could kill even without their energy weapons. But they also learned the cost. A warrior's claw raked across a soldier's armor, leaving deep gouges. Another soldier went down. Overwhelmed by 3 warriors at once, Minji Park moved through the chaos like a dancer performing a violent ballet. Her knife found weak points in chitin armor, her movements precise and deadly. She had fought hand-to-hand before many times. For her, this was familiar territory. She organized the defenders around her, turning panic into focused resistance. In the eastern sector, Scout Min Ho-an found himself cut off from his unit. The electromagnetic pulse had come just as he was moving between positions. 3 swarm warriors spotted him and changed direction. Seeing an easy kill, Min-ho had never killed anything before becoming a soldier. His species were pacifists by nature, preferring observation to violence. He had only completed the close combat training because his commander ordered it. He had thought he would never need it. The first warrior reached him, claws extended. Min-ho drew his breaching axe, the weapon feeling wrong in his hands. But his body remembered the training. He sidestepped the claws and brought the axe down on the warrior's arm, severing it. The warrior screamed. Min-ho hit it again, this time in the head. The second warrior was already coming. Min-ho was breathing hard, his heart's racing. He had no time to think, only react. He met the warrior's charge with his axe, trading blows. A claw caught his shoulder, tearing through armor and flesh. Pain exploded through him, but he kept fighting. The third warrior flanked him, trying to attack from the side. Min-ho spun, using the axe's handle to block a claw strike, then reversing his grip to bury the blade in the warrior's thorax. The warrior fell, and Min-ho turned back to finish the second one. When reinforcements reached his position 3 minutes later, they found Min-ho standing among 3 dead swarm warriors. He was bleeding from multiple wounds, his axe notched and stained. He had held the corridor alone. Commander Seo-jin led the defense of the western sector. The commander was 53 years old and had not been in ground combat in 15 years. Seo-jin had always commanded from safety, coordinating from command centers. But when the pulse hit and the shields failed, there was no safety. A swarm warrior broke through the defensive line and charged directly at Seo-jin. The commander's rifle was dead, the power cell drained by the pulse. For a moment, old instincts screamed to run, to call for help, to retreat to optimal range. Instead, Seo-jin fixed the bayonet and charged to meet the warrior. The collision was violent. The warrior was larger and stronger, but Seo-jin had trained for this. The commander used the bayonet like the human instructors had taught, not trying to overpower the enemy but targeting weak points. The blade found gaps in the chitin armor, drawing blood. The warrior's claws raked across Seo-jin's chest, but the commander's armor held. Seo-jin stabbed again and again until the warrior fell. Around him, coalition soldiers saw their commander fighting hand-to-hand and found their own courage. Captain Dae-ho Kim coordinated the defense from the mobile command post. He could see all 4 sectors on his displays, watching the battle unfold. The coalition forces were holding, but barely. Casualties were mounting. For every swarm warrior killed, 2 more seemed to take its place. Southern sector is buckling, Jawan reported. They need reinforcements. Send the reserve company, Dae-ho ordered. He looked at Captain Yoonji Kang. Take your team and shore up that line. Do not let it break? Yoonji nodded and grabbed her weapon. She led a strike team of 30 human soldiers into the southern sector at a run. They found coalition forces locked in desperate melee combat, the line beginning to collapse under the pressure. Human forces, wedge formation. Yoonji shouted. Her team formed a tight wedge and drove into the swarm warriors like a blade. They fought with brutal efficiency, using every trick humanity had learned in millennia of warfare. They targeted weak points, used terrain for advantage, and coordinated their attacks. The coalition soldiers saw the humans arrive and rallied. The line stabilized, then began to push forward. Step by bloody step, they drove the swarm back. The battle raged for 16 hours. There were no breaks, no pauses. The void swarm kept coming in waves, and the defenders kept fighting. Energy weapons came back online eventually, but by then everyone had blood on their hands, human and alien alike. Minji Park lost count of how many warriors she killed. Her knife dulled and she switched to her backup. Her arms ached from swinging, her lungs burned from exertion. But she kept fighting because stopping meant dying. Taejun Shin's bayonet broke off in a warrior's skull. He finished that fight with his tomahawk, then picked up a fallen warrior's claw and used that as a weapon. Around him, coalition soldiers did the same, learning in blood what their training had tried to teach them. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found the colony intact. The defenders were exhausted, wounded, and traumatized. But they had held. General Yuna Song stood before the Coalition Military Council, her 4 massive arms clasped behind her back. The council chamber was circular, with representatives from 40 different member species seated around the perimeter. Holographic displays showed data from the Battle of Threshold Prime, numbers that told a story no one could ignore. The defense of Threshold Prime has forced us to reconsider our entire military doctrine, Yuna said. Her voice was deep and carried authority earned through 40 years of service. For the first time in this war, a garrison force defeated a major void swarm assault without retreating or requiring orbital bombardment. A council member from the Vexian delegation raised one of her 6 hands. General, the casualty rate was 40%. That is unacceptable by coalition standards. It is less than the 94% casualty rate we suffer when shields fail and we have no close combat capability, Yuna replied. The Battle of Threshold Prime was brutal, but 2 million civilians survived. In every previous engagement of similar size, we evacuated the civilians and abandoned the colony. Colonel Woojin Bei stepped forward to present the detailed analysis. He had been working with coalition strategic planning for 3 months now, ever since the success of the initial training programs. We have reviewed every engagement with the Void Swarm over the past 5 years, Woojin said. The pattern is clear. In 78% of ground engagements, the swarm uses electromagnetic pulses to disable our shields and energy weapons. When this happens, casualties are catastrophic unless we retreat immediately. The holographic displays changed, showing comparative data. Battles where coalition forces had retreated versus Threshold Prime, where they had stood and fought. The numbers were compelling. The human approach to hybrid warfare gives us options we did not have before, Woojin continued. Long-range engagement remains our primary tactic. But when that fails, we no longer collapse. We adapt and continue fighting. Researcher Sora Yoon spoke next, her crystalline growths glowing with calm blue light. We have completed the weapon retrofit program. Every plasma rifle in the Coalition arsenal now has a bayonet mount and reinforced structure for close combat. We have also distributed backup weapons to all combat units. The technology is sound, but is the training sufficient? Another council member asked. Teaching soldiers to fight with primitive weapons takes time. We have millions of troops across hundreds of worlds. Sergeant Minji Park had been invited to address the council, the first human non-officer to receive such an honor. She stood and faced the assembled leaders without hesitation. Basic close-quarters combat competency can be taught in 6 weeks. We are not trying to make everyone an expert. We are teaching them to survive when their primary weapons fail. 6 weeks seems insufficient, the council member protested. It is more training than they have now, Minji replied bluntly. And 6 weeks of training is better than dying because you do not know how to use a knife. We can provide advanced training for specialized units, but every soldier should know the basics. The debate continued for hours. Some council members argued for continuing the old doctrine with minor modifications. Others wanted to fully embrace the new hybrid approach. General Yuna listened to all of them before making her decision. "The evidence is clear," Yuna declared. "We will implement the new doctrine across all coalition military forces. Every soldier will receive basic close-quarters combat training. All weapons platforms will be retrofitted for hybrid warfare. We are not abandoning our technological advantages. We are supplementing them with tactical flexibility." The council voted. The new doctrine passed with 72% approval. The coalition military would fundamentally change how it fought wars. The months that followed were transformative. Training centers across coalition space began teaching close-quarters combat. Sergeant Minji Park was promoted to training commandant and spent her days traveling between facilities, ensuring standards were maintained. Private Taejin Shin became an instructor at the new Coalition War College. His experiences at Threshold Prime making him a valuable teacher. Engineer Jungmin Kwan's weapon designs became standard across the coalition. Her bayonet mounts appeared on every rifle. Her reinforced stocks prevented weapons from breaking in close combat. She continued to innovate, developing new hybrid weapon systems that blended coalition technology with human practicality. Not everyone adapted easily. Some coalition soldiers struggled with the physical demands of close combat training. Others resisted the philosophy, arguing it was a step backward. But the numbers from Threshold Prime were impossible to ignore. The colony had held. That simple fact changed minds. Scout Minho-an became an unexpected advocate for the new doctrine. During recovery from his wounds, reporters had interviewed him about holding the corridor alone against 3 swarm warriors. His story spread across coalition space, a testament to what training could accomplish. "I am not a warrior by nature," Minho told a gathering of new recruits 6 months after the battle. His shoulder still had not fully healed, and he moved it stiffly. "My species are observers, not fighters. But the training saved my life. When my rifle failed and the swarm came for me, I knew what to do. That knowledge kept me alive." The recruits listened intently as Minho described the fight. He did not glorify it or make it seem heroic. He described the fear, the pain, the desperate struggle. But he also described the satisfaction of surviving because he had been prepared. Commander Seojin was promoted to general and given command of coalition forces in the Outer Rim. His leadership at Threshold Prime had proven his ability to adapt under pressure. He implemented the new doctrine across his entire command structure, ensuring every unit under his command received proper training. "We were arrogant," Seojin told Captain Daeho Kim during a visit to the Coalition War College. "We thought our technology made us invincible. We forgot that war is ultimately about individuals making choices under pressure. Your people reminded us of that truth." Daeho watched coalition soldiers training in the combat facility below. They were fixing bayonets, practicing knife techniques, learning to fight when everything else failed. "We just shared what we learned through hard experience. Every species that survives long enough learns these lessons. You just had not been tested in a way that required them." 6 months after the Battle of Threshold Prime, the Void Swarm launched another major offensive. They targeted 3 colonies simultaneously, committing massive forces to each. It was the largest swarm operation of the war, designed to overwhelm coalition defenses through sheer numbers. The coalition met them with the new doctrine. Long-range engagement remained the primary tactic. Coalition forces used their superior plasma weapons to devastating effect, cutting down swarm warriors at distances measured in kilometers. The technology that had always been their strength continued to serve them well, but when the inevitable electromagnetic pulses came and shields failed, the coalition forces did not collapse. They fixed bayonets. Captain Yunji Kang led forces at the colony of New Haven. When the pulse hit and the swarm charged, her troops stood firm. They had trained for this moment. They knew what to do. The close combat was brutal, but they held the line. Lieutenant Ji-won Han commanded a unit at the colony of Far Point. His silver fur was matted with blood by the end of the battle, his combat knife notched from repeated use. but his sector held, and the civilians evacuated safely behind his defensive line. Across all three colonies, the pattern repeated. The coalition forces engaged at range, adapted when technology failed, and continued fighting through close combat. They took casualties, but they held ground. They saved civilians. They won. The Void Swarm had expected easy victories. They had expected coalition forces to break when shields failed and retreat as they always had. Instead, they found an enemy that could fight at any range with any weapon. The swarm lost tens of thousands of warriors and gained nothing. After the 3 battles, the swarm changed their tactics. They began avoiding ground assaults on coalition colonies, recognizing that the easy victories were over. The war was not finished, but the momentum had shifted. General Unisong called another meeting of the military council. This time, the mood was very different. "The new doctrine is working," she announced. "Casualty rates are down 30% across all engagements. Colony survival rates are up 60%. The Void Swarm is retreating from ground combat because we are no longer easy targets." Captain Daeho Kim received the coalition's highest military decoration for his role in transforming their military. During the ceremony, General Yuna said, "You gave us back something we had lost. We built weapons that could destroy stars, but we forgot how to be warriors. You reminded us that courage and adaptability matter as much as technology." Daeho accepted the honor but deflected the praise. Every species in the coalition had these capabilities already. You just needed permission to remember them. War is not about having the best weapons. It is about being willing to use whatever works to protect what you value. The ceremony ended with a demonstration by mixed human and coalition forces. They showed the hybrid warfare doctrine in action. Long-range precision followed by seamless transition to close combat. It was efficient and deadly,